Howdy, y'all. Bubba Bush, head coach at Brazos Valley Mixed Martial Arts and Fitness. I'm here today for another totally non-trademark infringing wing eating challenge with my buddy Dmitri. Dmitri, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, y'all. My name is Dmitri. I instruct kickboxing as well as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu here at BVMMA.
All right, man. So we're going to do it. We're going to eat these wings. Just nice, this first delicious barbecue wing.
Cool.
And then I'll ask you a quick question.
All right.
Sort it out, talk it out, whatever you want.
Here we go.
All right, man.
Truth.
So originally, you're from Chicago, and then I know you were in the Army, in
Mm-hmm.
the Army Reserves, and you have a degree in gender studies from Texas A&M. You previously worked in a juvenile detention center right before you came here. We're talking to you, and then you now coach full time in martial arts. Some people wouldn't think that all those things come from the same person. Very diverse, unique path, I think.
Yep.
And now you're in College Station, Texas, training people in martial arts and self-defense and kickboxing. What led you down that unconventional path?
Yeah, so I never thought that I would end up in Texas originally. I had a job opportunity. And so with that, the juvenile detention center, I had just got out of the Army, and so I needed a job. I got out in 2020, which was like the uprising and like the, pretty much the big time of the pandemic. And so I needed to make money, and the juvenile detention center got back to me, and I had some employment with them. And so with that, like all these things just kind of came into play, and it just kind of became a part of my life, and I went ahead and took on the challenge. And one thing about the detention center, I never thought that I'd have a job like that, but working with the youth there, I just realized how much talent that they had. However, their talent was led in a destructive manner instead of a constructive manner. So it's not like they don't have any talent or any intellect. They do. It's just, unfortunately, they were led down a bad path. However, I was working with them to try and give them a sense of hope, to lead them into a more positive type of direction. And so I can see that kind of same thing with being a coach. You just never know who you're going to influence. Martial arts has always been a part of my life. And it wasn't until I started reading the Bible, learning more about God, and practicing martial arts that actually got me down a better path myself.
Oh, that's amazing. So you kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you saw people with talent that was a little too late for, maybe, and said, I'm going to go catch them on the front end.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really cool.
And I didn't realize how much of an impact that I would have on individuals until other people started telling me. And so once that happened, I was just like, oh, hey, maybe this is the right job for me. Sometimes you have to understand like a good thing from the right thing. Like you can have a good job, but is it the right job? I think there's a difference there.
Oh, that's awesome. And then you were doing kickboxing before. You'd kind of left for a while to do the Army.
Yeah, I sure did. Yes. That's when I was kind of soul searching. I was like, oh man, I really need to find my place. And so in the midst of that journey, when I was in the Army, I did good work. It just wasn't the right thing.
That's cool. Oh, awesome. All right, well, let's dive into our second wing here.
All right. Here we go.
Which one's this? Blue agave sriracha. I was like, So you've done probably more than 12 women's self-defense seminars in the last year. Been awesome at all of them. Incredible feedback. Why is this something that you've championed and you've really put forth and volunteered and said, this is really what I want to do?
So ever since I was a junior in college, I had an interest in understanding more about interpersonal violence and intimate partner violence as well, and educating people about what it means to maintain healthy relationships. Sometimes people don't understand what a healthy relationship should look like. And unfortunately, sometimes people can't be in a dating violence situation, but not understand the red flags of that or where to go for help. So I worked a lot in prevention education, which is educating people about the red flags of, hey, if you're in a situation and something's not quite right, like where do you go for help or who can you speak to, things like that. And so I was educating a lot about, if you see certain signs, where can you go to? But I'm also a martial artist, and it's like, if you encounter a violent situation, what techniques can you utilize to just keep yourself safe? And so I started out with Taekwondo, and I did get my black belt in that. And so martial arts has always pretty much been a part of my life. And so once I came down to Texas, I was like, yeah, let me look up some MMA gyms. And so once I started understanding what it's like to grapple, this was the first place where I learned how to grapple. And I had no interest in grappling, but I just decided to try it out and I had so much fun. And I was like, yeah, I definitely want to keep this going. And so it just kind of turned into a career, an unexpected career move. And once I started teaching these self-defense classes, I'm like, hey, I have this knowledge in violence prevention, but now what about the intervention part? What if someone grabs your wrist? How can you manipulate your wrist in order to gain some space and say, hey, back up. I don't want you touching me. Or what if someone tackles you to the ground? How can you use your limbs to stand back up and create some space and get yourself to safety? So it's understanding not only the red flags and how to carry that confidence within you, but if someone touches you in a way that you don't want to be touched, what techniques can you utilize to keep yourself safe?
Had to start by teaching people there was a problem, how to recognize that problem.
Yeah.
And now also teach how to deal with that problem.
Exactly. Yeah, how I like to think about it is we have the prevention aspect, but we also have the intervention aspect.
Yeah. All right, for the next one?
Yeah, all right, let's try it.
All right, let's go through it. This is a new one. I haven't had this one before.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give yourself, say 5 years ago? A younger Dmitri.
That's a good one. I would say overall, life feels good, but you know it feels even better when you're married to the right person. I'm sure a lot of us are guilty of this. Man, sometimes I was chasing after certain women, and at a certain point, I realized, why did I like that person? Or if I were to have been in a relationship, would it have been good? You know what I mean? No. But it wasn't. I
was just waiting on Chloe the whole time.
Oh, I hear you, man. And to tell you the truth, when I met Cheyenne, yo, that's where it was at. I always have fun with her. She's literally my best friend. And so I knew kind of like, oh, yeah, you want to marry your best friend. But I didn't really know what it meant until I was in that position.
I mean, a lot of people do want that, though. They're already seeking that desperately. Yeah. It's more of a, how do I hold on and wait for that if it's not hold it up too high?
Yeah, and so you had one key word in there. It was desperate. See, I think at a certain point in time I was desperate, but it wasn't until I started working on myself and started, pretty much focused on what I needed to do. And then Cheyenne just kind of came along, and it wasn't something planned. It was something that just naturally happened.
Dating advice with Dmitri.
I know, right?
Okay. All right, let's roll a last one here. Let me get you one more question. Follow up. I know you love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Every time I've asked you a question like, what superhero was your favorite, or what power would you have? You tell me, I'd be a Ninja Turtle. I actually like the Ninja Turtles better.
Yeah.
But I asked you about, have you read The Last Ronin yet? And you had a pretty interesting take on that.
That's right.
Last Ronin's a comic book, a graphic novel about the Ninja Turtles that came out in the last few years, and it's kind of about the demise or the ending, kind of wraps up the story of the Turtles.
Yep. Yeah, so having read it, I do appreciate it for what it is, but for those who don't know, spoiler alert, 3 of the 4 turtles die. Man, once I heard that, I'm like, I ain't ready for my homies to die like that. I've grown up with the 4 turtles. Just to know 3 out of 4 of them died. Ah, man. I might read that comic book and start crying.
Well, they all die eventually.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's true, but they don't just die. They are murdered. So I'm just kind of like, nah. Especially Raphael, that's my homie. I know a lot of people, they kind of say, oh, yeah, he's a hothead and all this stuff, but Raphael's cool, And just and not just him, like, I like all of them, but Raphael is my favorite. And just to see them crushed like that, I ain't ready for that.
Is that so? Raphael is the opposite of your personality, though. It's not your spirit animal. Is that your just like your guilty pleasure, your aspiration? Or that's not like, I wish I was more like that, or I value what he does, or how does that?
So I do like each turtle for each kind of talent that they have, but for Raphael, so he comes off as like this hard type dude. And now I will say, so the turtles are from Brooklyn, but he has the most authentic Brooklyn accent out of all the turtles. And so just to hear him say, you know, Leo, hey man, if you brought us out here for nothing, just hearing the way he speak and watching his swag and the way he moves and how he handles himself and he carries himself, that reminds me of being in Chicago. You know, we're both from a big city, and we just I have a little bit of an accent. I don't sound Southern at all. And then when you really get to know me, man, I start using my dialect, and yeah, you know, it just kind of reminds me of Raphael in a little bit. So even though we are kind of like polar opposites, we do have a lot of similarities.
Okay, you find those. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, guys, thanks for being with us. And Dmitri, thanks again.
Yeah. Thank you for your time.
All right.
And thank you for having me.